On a rainy day in 2007, a young Scotty Shifts had just gained consciousness. I can't say I remember too much, but more than anything I remember vividly my first time seeing an S197 Mustang. They were unveiled to the world just 2 years prior, that's only a year after I was born, and between my grandpa and I we would always talk about how I'd get a red one and he'd get a green one when I was older. This kind of happened. I ended up getting a black 5.0 and he decided he didn't want a car anymore. Can't trust anyone these days. I bought the car 6 months ago and it still feels odd that I dreamt about this car for 17 years. And while it's an amazing feeling, it doesn't come without its fair share of bitterness. Today I want to share the experience of buying my dream car 17 years later and why you might want to hold out on it. I always loved cars. It could have been the ugliest Lada you've ever seen and I still somehow would have appreciated it. But naturally, my favorite cars were the loud, fast, and wild American muscle cars. There was something so special about seeing these cars in movies, music videos, etc. And between the Challengers, Camaros, and Mustangs, I always loved the ponies the most. So in 2020, when I was old enough to drive, there was nothing I wanted more than an S197 5.0. Unfortunately, there was some nonsense talk about, oh, too fast for first car or whatever, and that idea was shut down. Plus, insurance might have sent me into eternal debt, so as longtime viewers of this channel will probably know, I got a 2015 EcoBoost. It was a nice car, but before going to college, I sold it. I was supposed to go a while without owning a car, but as you know, you can't keep a young player like myself from what he wants. So during spring break, I went to San Antonio and got myself a manual 2011 Mustang GT with 93,000 miles on the dash. Of course, I was ecstatic, and on the polar opposite side of the spectrum was my father, who claimed it would be so unreliable and I'd spend more fixing it than what it was even worth. Just a quick foreshadow, he was 100% correct. First off, the car had an unbelievable amount of cosmetic issues. I'm talking headlights, fog lights, paint, and scratches so big they make your mom look small. Sorry. So first thing I did was get the front bumper painted, which was about $400, and new halo fog lights, which were $150. These two mods by themselves were unbelievable in transforming the look of the car, but unfortunately we were just scratching the surface. When buying the car, we noticed a ridiculous whine coming from the engine bay and transmission at the same time. Like, how the hell does that even happen? Pick a struggle, please? Some initial diagnoses gave us the idea that it was an aftermarket differential that had the wrong ratio. This would cause inefficiency and binding up with the axles, which theoretically could create that whining sound. Turns out, we couldn't have been more wrong. There were two sources of whining, which came from a rundown serpentine belt, which cost us roughly $145 to replace, and the vital pilot bearing, which cost a tad more at $530. Jeez. I want this video to act as sort of a guide as well, so I want to take the time to explain the pilot bearing issue. The pilot bearing is a very small part that sits at the end of the crankshaft and supports a transmission input shaft. This allows it to spin independently of the engine crankshaft. This is a very important function because it allows both the engine and trans shafts to spin in a stabilized motion, allowing for shifting to be smooth when both are aligned. If the pilot bearing didn't do its job to align the two, shifting would cause detrimental effects on the engine because it would sporadically change RPMs constantly and lead to a blown engine. Sorry for the little engineering lesson, but it gives us a perfect segue into the next and biggest thing I had to fix, the godforsaken MT82 transmission. Imagine the pain you would feel if your best friend and dog passed away on the same day. Multiply that pain by 10 times and you will understand a shred of the pain an MT82 owner feels when shifting into second. This transmission is genuinely so buns. Words can't explain the hatred I feel for it. Prior to buying the car, the dealership had the synchros in 3rd and 4th gear changed. Great. I still have insane grinding and lockout when shifting into either one at higher PM, so that was actually for no reason, but whatever. Okay, fine. Watch any YouTube video and everyone says an aftermarket clutch will do the trick. My car has a McLeod Street Pro organic clutch kit, and it's still absolute cheeks. I've done a lot of work on the trans, and to be honest, I still can't say that it's nice to shift. I find myself constantly worried about power shifting and having to be very precarious about how I shift in general. There's nothing I can truly say to comfort you about this trans. Everyone and their mother knows this is a terrible, terrible transmission, and there's a reason Ford has been sued multiple times over it. If it's any consolation, I still haven't tried the MGW shifter, which people seem to rave about, and there's always the option to just Tremec swap it. The next major fix I had to do was all about cooling. I knew there was a small leak in the radiator from a previous checkup, but my typical brazenness was convinced it was something I could take care of in a jiff. This was not the case, and when my car went into limp mode at 1 AM on the highway, I can't say I was looking forward to seeing my dad's face. Interestingly enough, my dad was heated when he saw me, almost like he too had issues with his cooling system. I requested a flatbed from AAA because my car is so low, and of course after an hour of waiting we were surprised to see a standard tow truck. Great. Then we waited another half hour for a flatbed and finally got the car to our usual mechanic. My boy Luis did his thing, and after spending nearly $1,500, he replaced the radiator, thermostat, oil pressure switch, oil pan, and some belts in the engine bay. As you can see, I've had to put a lot of elbow grease into this car to make it fairly reliable. Some people may not have bothered with a lot of the repairs I made, but I needed this car to be reliable because I have to drive 8 hours to college and there's no chance I want to get stranded in West Texas. I did a few miscellaneous mods as well. The car came straight piped and catless, which was cool for a bit, but I wanted a nicer growl, so I purchased the Borla Pro XS muffler for $200 and had them installed for $150. This was actually really stupid because I went back to straight pipe a couple of months later. Summer had ended and I no longer had my parents' garage to work out of, so I needed this car to be in tip-top shape for my journey to hell. Lubbock. About 5 hours into my drive up, my car went into limp mode. Buddy, when I say I was scared, I was shaking in my damn boots. And immediately I decided to stop at a local mechanic in some random town. I simply asked the mechanic to read the code to see how bad the issue is. It turned out to be a faulty O2 sensor, meaning I could drive it the rest of the way fine. This is because all an O2 sensor does is, as the name suggests, measure the amount of oxygen coming into the car and send that information to the car's brain/ECU, which then calculates how much fuel to give the engine and create a favorable mixture that makes the car run as efficiently as possible. To someone who doesn't deal with cars often, this may seem like a big deal, and while prolonged driving on a bad O2 sensor isn't the greatest thing in the world, a few hundred miles wouldn't do anything, and I promise to this day I'm still running super rich AFR. Anyway, I thought this would be a $20 plus tip setback, but I gotta hand it to the mechanic. He knew he could take advantage of me, and he did. The prick asked for $60 for something that took 30 seconds to do. I'll get my revenge on him one day. Since being up in Lubbock for the past 2 months, the car has gone limp on me twice. Once the wrench light came on, it went into limp mode, which forced me to have it towed to a local mechanic here. After some diagnosis, we attributed to the O2 sensor issue, and after that and some miscellaneous repairs, the bill was a cool $930. I can't keep doing this. As I'm writing this, the car literally just broke down in the exact same way like 45 minutes ago. Fortunately, I turned it on and off again, and it got out of limp mode, which makes me think the O2 sensor wasn't really the problem, and it may just be an ECU glitch. And that's a point I want to specify. Owning a car like this is really hard work. Lots of trial and error is required, and to be honest, I can't say I was fully prepared for it. My previous Mustang had a warranty, and it was easy to take it to Ford and have them look at it for days at a time while I drove my parents' cool cars every day. But when you're young and living on your own, you don't really have that luxury. So keep that in mind if you're looking at getting a car like this at a young age. I know I've ragged on this car a lot in this video, but please don't be discouraged because I want to say a couple of things about this car that to me completely even out the pros and cons.
And I'm fortunate enough to where if I really wanted to, my parents could have bought me a much more expensive, luxurious, more reliable car than what I have now. But this is not about the car. Never in my life will I forget how my dad and I drove 3 hours to pick up my childhood dream car, and on the way back he had to drive it because I wasn't comfortable driving manual in traffic. He ended up getting stuck in traffic and it took him almost 5 hours to get home. But that's a moment that I'll never forget. He bargained with mechanics about how much a repair would cost me. He taught me how to drive manual in this car essentially. And all the while he still took the BMW high ground, but whatever. The point is that through this vehicle, through this metal and scrap and everything, I was able to spend time with my dad, which frankly, now that I live so far away, it's a little harder to come by. My first exposure to fast cars was my dad's F10 M5. That car is faster than this car. It's more reliable, and frankly, I would have no issues that I have in this car with it. For one, the transmission is stellar. And, you know, apart from all the other things, my back also wouldn't hurt after really long drives. But when I was a kid and I was pretending to drive a car, I wasn't thinking how many apps I'm gonna have in CarPlay. I wasn't thinking how smooth my DCT transmission is gonna be. I wasn't thinking, oh, I'm gonna have massaging seats in my car. I didn't care about that. I would watch Fast and Furious, I would watch Top Gear, and all I wanted was an awesome transmission with a really loud V8. And that's exactly what I get with this car. What else could I want? For the price of what I paid for this car and all the repairs included, I could have bought that exact same M5. And like I said, a lot of the issues that I have with this car, I would not have had with that car. But the only way I can describe it is sold. In 30 years, I'll go to a BMW dealership and I'll buy the 5 Series that they have for sale. And it will be the exact same car as my dad has right now. All that's gonna be is, oh, there's gonna be a bigger screen, there's gonna be more technology. But this Mustang will never be replicated again. Within 10 years, all V8s will be completely phased out. Manual transmissions, nobody even knows how to drive them anymore. They'll all be gone. And so, despite what everyone says, and despite what even I've said earlier in this video, this car's alright to me. It was never about this car, it was never about the Mustang. It's the emotions and the significance that's attached to it. It's the fact that I've wanted this car for so long. It's the fact that you've wanted your dream car for so long. Nobody cares. Eventually this car, it will be in a scrapyard and it will be nothing but scrap metal. But you will never forget the feelings that you had driving that car, your first time sitting in it, all the people who told you, cool car, all the people who sat on it and told you, wow, this is the most, fun car I've ever been in. You will never forget that. It's the emotions, the memories. That's what buying this car is all about. So that's why, even though, yes, you may have to spend money to refurbish the car and you may have to take time to keep it clean and all this and all that, it's worth it. Because at the end of the day, you only live once, and why rob yourself of the ability to drive your dream car? That's about all I have to say about this, guys. Thank y'all for watching this video. I've had the pleasure of making it. I hope you guys enjoyed, and please don't think I'm ragging on the M5. I do love it. One thing you can never keep up with is when you downshift this baby. It screams like no other.
This is not a fire drill, no. This is not a fire drill, now here comes the tornado. It's catastrophic when we spin around, we give out halo. We flying with some Dracos, like Draco better lay low. We camping out on grass shit at the